I'll start this video with the prefix that the Legends style of CCG typically have 4 archetypes of decks. The first of which is the aggro deck, which aims to kill the opponent quickly. The next is the mid-range deck, which aims to do a similar thing, but slower and with more of a focus on solid board control. Then you've got control decks, which aim to prevent death from happening with big heals and stall effects, and board clears in order to play game-winning minions and spells in the late game. And last but definitely not least, you've got combo decks. These aim to cycle or draw many cards in order to find a specific game-winning combo of cards, which often win the game in 1 or 2 turns, as is the case with Hearthstone's Freeze Mage, which, if you aren't familiar, often wins by setting your opponent's health to 15 using a powerful 9-mana legendary card called Alexstrasza, and then next turn using damage spells to seal the deal. So, with that out of the way, at the moment on Legends ranked ladder, mid-range decks are the bulk of what you will be seeing, with the few spatterings of aggressive lists, such as the recent Firebrand variant of Battle Mage thrown in, and very occasionally a slow control deck, and never a 1 or 2 turn kill combo deck. So why is the meta like this, and where are the control and combo decks? First off, the meta is largely mid-range, I believe, because the game has only recently left closed beta, and so has only recently become accessible to anyone who wants to try it. Therefore, most players' collections are still pretty empty of the juicy legendaries and epics. This, coupled with the fact that the vast majority of base cards that everyone has access to are mid-range commons and rares, encourages players to bung in all their solid mid-range cards that they start with, and call it a day. This way they can fight for board and go for the simple game plan of control the board and occasionally punch the other guy in the face to win. The same rule of thumb runs true for aggro decks, as the base set includes many solid 1 and 2 drops, and even 3 drops, and many of these low early game drops are quite cheap to craft, and therefore are a reasonable choice for a new player to go with. So that's why I believe the meta is currently what it is, mostly practical reasons. So let's move on to why there are only a few control decks and no combo decks at all. First off, control decks. It's not that there aren't many good control cards, there certainly are. If we look at strength, we've got Vigilant Giant, an 8-mana 8/8 that draws a card, which in any other game would be really good, and in this game it also has Guard. That's an amazing control card. There's also Odoving, which has essentially a board clear attached to a 10/10 body, which as you would expect is just an incredible amount of power in one card. And there are many other similarly powerful late game cards. So where are these powerful late game control decks? A likely reason is that not many people at the moment can afford a control deck. As let's face it, a control deck often requires the most expensive cards in the game, with the most powerful and unique effects, which translates into these being legendaries and epics. And at the moment, most people have quite small collections, as the game has only recently, really, entered open beta, as opposed to closed beta. And so this practical reason probably does gate quite a few people from experimenting in the control arena, so to speak. It's also likely, however, that it is a result of the game only recently entering open beta, and therefore many of the new players are using homebrew experimental decks. And this makes for an extremely uncertain and unpredictable metagame. And this will make life extremely hard for potential control decks, as they can't effectively control what they can't predict, as they have very little idea of when to use or save a powerful card, as they have no idea what deck they are playing against or what cards they need to play around. However, this is quickly changing, as very recently, as of the time of this recording, there was a storm of the Archer Tempo list, as I believe it's called, a red-green strength agility list that uses all the tempo cards from agility, all the execute a minion if it's injured, coupled with all the if you have more health cards, to kind of tempo the game out of control. A really successful mid-range list that many people have adopted, and it has just stormed the ladder. And the more the game grows and the more the community becomes more competitive as a result, the more people will do this sort of thing, and net deck a super ultra refined list that they hope will dominate the ladder for them. Once this happens and continues to happen, a more stable meta will emerge, one which can be defined and so therefore can be planned against by potential control decks. With this in mind, control decks will be able to use the best cards in their decks to counter and control the metagame, and in-game they will be able to play their control deck optimally, as they will have a more informed knowledge of what cards they need to save removal for, as well as how valuable their board clears actually are against certain decks, and how valuable their silences are, etc. So that's why I believe there aren't many control decks on ladder at the moment. But what about the complete absence of combo decks? So as we did for control, I'm just going to look at a couple of solid potential combo cards that do exist at the moment. The first is Ice Spike. This is essentially the perfect cantrip card, a term from Magic the Gathering which simply means a cheap card with a small effect, the 2 damage, which also cycles itself, allowing you to draw further into your deck and closer to your game-winning combo. So on top of this, you've got Iliac Sorcerer in Endurance. This card is a 1-mana 1/1 with ward, which when the ward goes, when it loses its ward, it doubles in power. This has OTK potential because you can stack weapons and buffs on this card, and then possibly firebolt off the ward on your turn and then punch the opponent in the face for a massive amount of damage. However, neither of these cards are foolproof. Iliac Sorcerer, whilst it does have OTK potential, it does require this creature to stick to the board for a turn, and avoid removal, avoid any guard minion, avoid silence, which is a pretty big call, and even shackle effects. So an argument against Ice Spike is that whilst it is a great cantrip card, it doesn't cantrip into any OTK combo. Sure, Intelligence has Lightning Bolts and Crushing Blow in the neutral set, but that isn't exactly an OTK combo, is it? That's maximum 12 damage in a turn. There's also Lilandral Hexmage. You could do some action shenaniganry with that, but it seems extremely unlikely that you'll be able to do huge amounts of damage with that card. So neither of these cards really set the case for a strong combo deck. This was likely a deliberate design decision by Direwolf Digital, as combo decks do have the potential to be extremely unhealthy, as is again the case with Hearthstone's Freeze Mage. For the longest time people have begged Blizzard to nerf it, which they did do back in beta, I believe. So in conclusion, at the moment the meta is a medley of homebrew aggro and mid-range, but we are seeing an ever-increasing number of ultra-refined net decked lists. And my prediction is that as this net decking increases, control decks will likely increase in ladder representation in sync, as they will be better able to predict what they need to control on ladder. And as for combo decks, well, they have a very uncertain future as it stands. So that'll be all for today, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked, give me a like. If you want to see more content like this, hit that sub button, and if you want to discuss today's topic, leave a comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. Ta-ta.